Okay, there we go.
Live from the Plutopia News Network. This is the Plutopia Happy Hour, and we're happy to have our friend JoRae Di Menno joining us tonight. The usual suspects are here, some of them anyway. Susie Sheeler, Scoop Sweeney, that's me, in the beautiful Plutopia t-shirt and coffee slash wine mug. We'll be talking about that later. I didn't wear my pimp hat. And of course, at the driving wheel is Maggie Duvall. Hi, Maggie.
Greetings. Yeah, let me just, hey, JoRae, how you doing?
Hey.
Yes. I'm not used to doing too many things at the same time anymore. So I just wanted to, I'm going to read off your little bio thing and then lob a question at you, okay? I'll try not to garble too much. You are the former director of publicity for South by Southwest, which you did for 10 years. And you set up press conferences for Tony Bennett, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, Nick Lowe, Roseanne Cash, Bob Mould, and many, many others. And since opening your own PR company, Hard Press Publicity, in 1998, you have placed stories in most major media, including The Big Takeover, New York Times, USA Today, Fresh Air on NPR with Terry Gross, Rolling Stone, Spin, on and on and on. It's in your bio. You've represented Canadian and French South by Southwest music contingents, Dutch contingent, Barbados. You've organized benefits featuring David Byrne, Lucinda Williams, Charlie Sexton, Los Lobos, and the reunion of the True Believers. For God's sake, it doesn't end. You currently still represent MAC, Trish Murphy, Robert Harrison, and more. And you started your music biz career as a freelance writer in Houston, which led to a position as editor of the Fitzherald, the house paper for Fitzgerald's nightclub. You were the first female DJ at Cardi's. And in the 80s, you became Ronnie Lane's publicist and caretaker. That took you to an experience in England for 4 months and that amazing Wembley Stadium Faces reunion. So that said, I think we're going to need more than one show to cover this.
Yeah,
so,
what do you do in your spare time now, or do you have?
My spare time. Well, I have to say this. One amazing artist I'm currently working with is Queen Esther.
Yes.
In New York. She's amazing and a very close friend. So.
Yes, Queen Esther is amazing. And I hope you do come back for several more because there's about 1 million different stories to tell. But first off, we'll circle back to all this. But being in the music industry and how it hit Austin, how is your pandemic?
Okay, let's see. Well, it's pretty, I mean, it's just a lot of things, it's sad about the music. It's, things are coming back a bit now, but just the venues like, Continental Club and Hotel Vegas. And it's wonderful that they're still here. Continental Club's going to open up on May 28th. But yeah, it's sad about the ones that have closed. But you asked me how my pandemic was. Okay, so it's, in the beginning, it just felt, it was freaky and weird. But there was just like, we didn't know what to think. So it was like a new adventure, even though this awful thing was going on at the same time, the pandemic. And I don't know, I liked it because it was quieter. You could hear the birds. Nobody was driving, hardly at all. Yeah, and I used to go down, I'd go downtown like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm a late nighter. And I just drive down the east side and then over to Dirty 6th Street, which is not my favorite place to go, but it was great at that time. Because, it was so quiet that I could have stopped my car and parked it in the middle of 6th Street and walked around, and I don't think even any cops would have bothered me.
Wow.
And there was just a bunch of really super cool, a lot of the storefronts were boarded up, and there were just lots of paintings and drawings. And there was this one, I swear it's Alejandro Escovedo, but it looks just like him, but he's kind of peeking out, and it says, "Is it safe to come out yet?" So it's just cool stuff like that. Yeah, and it definitely, I took hits in regards to work situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of
JoRae, I have a lot of, my friends are musicians and concert production people from my past existence in the Bay Area. And I'm amazed at the number of people that just went from being hardworking, people doing well to just barely existing. Sound companies I used to use for concerts, they're gone. They're out of business. They had to sell out and sell their equipment, a couple of them. And have you seen the same kind of thing in this market?
Well, I think I've seen it in regards to some venues that have closed down, and just that fear of hopefully one more won't close. Like Barracuda closed. I love that venue. It was like walking back into the 80s, only present. It was really cool. So they completely closed down. I think too, I had to take it in increments. Because if I really looked at it, faced what was going on, it was incredibly painful just to think about something that I've worked in for over 30 years and such changes, and just knowing that door people, bartenders, waitresses, sound people, just crew, sound crews, whatever, everybody it affected. I mean, it really shut that industry down in many ways. Like my son is in the film industry, and at first in our discussions, we thought it's never, what if it never comes back? That was kind of the feeling. But he's back at work, and he has been for a long time. And, they set the safer protocols up probably as long as 8 months ago. That doesn't mean it's exactly like it was, but people are working in that industry. I mean, and it is, I guess, turning around a bit. But yeah, what's a shakeout from all of it? Because one thing I like to say is sometimes everything looks better on paper. You can look on Facebook and everybody's happy about getting back out to the clubs and all of that. But I wonder what the reality is for everybody that's involved in that, like what they've all gone through, just especially money wise, rent wise, all of it, health.
I think there's, this idea that, there's this like solid demarcation line, right? And it's like, oh, hey, everybody out the chute again. Like, what?
Right.
How?
Exactly. I mean, even though I am super excited about the Continental Club opening, because that's my favorite venue. But at the same time, and I posted a big photo, on my Facebook timeline, but I'm still not sure that I'm going to walk back in there on May 28th.
Yeah.
I've been fully vaccinated, and I know that, I respect Steve Wertheimer 150%. Because I know he wants to make sure his staff is safe and people that go there. So I'll be interested just to see what that protocol is going to be. I wouldn't think that it's just like open the doors and you can do whatever you want. I don't think so. But
what if some of the, because your musician friends, they're your family. I mean, I don't know anybody else who, that whole wonderful network in Austin and beyond of your musician friends. What are some of your conversations been like, related to this? How are they feeling? What are you all thinking about in the future of music?
Well, some friends I see that, they haven't maybe picked up the instrument for a long time. They haven't, it's that same kind of feeling of sort of how I felt, just like it's too heavy, intense to even go there. or then I might watch I watched, there's this, I don't know, it wasn't the Willie Nelson one, but it was one of the first big music shows for, it was
Yeah, were they
benefiting.
all over the world or whatever? They were like, "Hey, I'm over in Botswana doing my music." That one?
Not that one, but that I know it's the one you mean. It was more. I think it was in Texas, and then I watched it, and it just seemed it was all of course, obviously virtual, but I was watching it, and I just felt like it just was empty. It was great. I'm glad that they had an outlet and I could listen. But then when they showed all they showed the venues, and I'm gonna get teary eyed again. They showed that, and it just like, then I felt all the emotion when I saw photos of things closed up, boarded up. They showed businesses that weren't, venues that weren't around anymore, Threadgills and just lots of other ones. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is, and usually I'm a pretty feeling person and I can address those things, but that one was just, I think on a psychological level, this whole pandemic has hit us, generally speaking, on very deep levels, and even in some ways we don't even can even articulate. But I have other musician friends that have said, they're slowly doing maybe like some outdoor stuff. A few of them have some dates booked at Sam's, and but one musician friend just said, he felt socially awkward. And it's like, yeah, I do too. I mean, and I'm a very social person. But I find that that's the case, just sad about not being able to do it, especially when you're a musician. And I feel like that is an outlet. That's something that's just so, it's in you. And how do you go from playing all the time to not playing at all,
Yeah, because there's something too, I mean, just as a fan, and when you're in that, like in an intimate club, there's like a feedback loop between the artists and the people in the audience and the people in the audience themselves. And yeah, it's like missing, and it's part of what feeds that high we all get when we're participating.
I think that happens in the big venues as well. I think that the artists kind of feed off, I like the idea of the small venue, but I think it's just across the board.
It is across the board. It's affecting everybody. I mean, I'm just relating it in regards to that's,
Yeah, no, I was just making the point that I think that it's kind of existential. It is a microcosm of what's happening.
It's a whole small to large. It's, you hear a lot, just like watching all those late night shows, like Colbert and Trevor Noah, and all of them had to reconstruct how they did what they did, and I admire that they did it. And and sometimes it was awkward, and obviously not the same. Sometimes I liked watching them better than I did before. It just depends.
I did too.
And I also just totally admire the musicians that put it out there and learned how to do shows online, Facebook Live and YouTube. And now that there was another music event that was right before the freeze here. It might have been the weekend before. It was actually, I think, that Saturday before it all hit. And it was, might have it wrong, but it seems like Joe Ely was on there, and just a bunch of great musicians. And I felt, when I watched that, I felt like I was back in the club again. That's the first time I'd felt that in a year. But it was, and everybody was, a lot of friends were texting and emailing, and I felt like I was out and we were all connecting. So that was really cool. That was probably the first, I think Alejandro played that one too. It was just really special.
Yeah, it says a lot for the people that put those things together, because yeah, I've watched a bunch of them. There were a few that were clinkers, but most of them were heartfelt and done just because people really needed their music. I'm that way. I mean, I go crazy if I can't get some sort of music going. And
we had Colin Gilmore on. He was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came on and sang for us.
It's going to be tough now that they're getting dates for opening. Anyone that's worked in the music business knows it doesn't just happen immediately. If you're booking a club, you have to start booking way ahead, and you have to hope that something doesn't change, because we saw how a lot of clubs, at the very beginning, were trying to book and they had to close, and they had to defer someone until a year later or 2 years later, the big acts. And musicians can't just pick it up and go. I mean, you have to rehearse. So it's going to be tough for a while. People just trying to get back in the swing of things.
Yeah.
I know.
The city, I think the city should totally suspend taxes for music venues and local clubs and stuff over the last 2 years. It's been impossible. They can barely make their rent, and then the taxes on top of that is just ridiculous, the property taxes. So that would be something that they could do to save their weird town brand that they're trying to hang on to so desperately.
Yeah, exactly. Something, because those venues, my understanding is they had to wait a long time, or some of them waited a long time before they had any help, from the city. And also just thinking about it, like you mentioned before about, the bigger venues and bigger artists, I mean, they're suffering too. I mean, regardless if maybe they have money in the bank and a nice big house, but they still need that income to keep, the playing. And when you have like major tours totally canceled out, that's going to be a loss of, income too.
Yeah. And it's not just the performer, when you're on a tour, that's hundreds of people. I mean, all over the country, that we're counting on that paycheck, and your crews are counting on that paycheck, and they're all unemployed.
Well, circling back to our publicist, a lot of times publicists get lost in the shuffle, right? I've noticed that, and part of, one of the questions I was going to ask you, JoRae, that ties into this is, it may seem obvious to us, but tell us, what does a music publicist do? What are all the facets that you work on and take care of?
Well, typically, like for instance, when I worked with Mac, that was more like, that was different, because I wasn't just only publicizing a CD release or a show. I was his ongoing publicist for about 10 years, I think. And I think something like that. But yeah, so there were lots of just different things to do. Like we'd go to New York a couple of times for events on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so that was fun. It was sort of getting to just keep people away or set up interviews and that kind of thing. And then most of what I do is CD releases, album releases, digital releases, really. I'll work with someone and I'll work a minimum of 3 months, and my goal is to get them reviewed and on air. I'm basically a, such as it is, magazine print publicist. But when I'm working a local release or a national, like if somebody hires me to do their release in their city, wherever it is, then I would work radio and all of it. Radio, we'll just say print for lack of a better word. And
I'm tying that in though too with when you have done tour press for people, right? That takes a lot of lead time, right?
I did a lot of tour press for Mac, and that was great. I worked on all the print stuff, and his manager Lynn worked on all the radio. So we divided that up, and it was great. It was organized and fun to do for the most part. And you have to get it all in advance, get it out in advance, not too far and not too close to the date.
Yeah, and it's not just sending out a release. It's that you've developed years of relationships with all these different writers, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that people forget. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have. Well, I mean, when I first started all this, I was in Houston and I worked at Fitzgerald's, the nightclub, and I just learned everything on the go. I mean, I had never did any band interviews or any of that stuff. And my sister Teresa got me involved in that. She's a photographer, and I wound up doing a review on Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul. And I remember thinking, I hope they like this. And then I started writing for a lot of papers. And then I worked at Fitzgerald's and I was their club publicist. I did ad sales. I worked at the Fitzherald, the paper. I waitressed. I did everything. I just wanted to learn. And then I wound up leaving the Fitzgerald's, and that's when I went to Cardi's. They wanted to have, it's a rock and roll club, and they wanted more bands playing there like Fitzgerald. So they thought I would be able to help them do that. But, and that's when I became their DJ. And then
What year was that?
That was like 80, probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 maybe.
Okay, all right.
And it was fun. And I mean, all the young women were excited because there had never been a female DJ. But it was kind of funny because I really loved the guy that I worked with. He totally understood where I was coming from and vice versa. But when I would DJ at the end of the night, I would be just like, get me out of here. And it was, I'd end the night with like the quiet U2 song. They didn't want that. They wanted it to be like, take your
like
top
Van
off.
Diemen's Land or something.
Yeah, like, so. And then I just said, okay, that's not cut out for me. And then I DJ'd at a new wave club. I love that. And then I booked a club in Montrose in Houston, and that was Misty's. Not the best name, but it was fun. And I wound up, since I knew a lot of Austin bands that played at Fitzgerald's, I wanted to get their phone numbers to book them in Misty's. So I called the Austin Chronicle, and they gave me Michael Corcoran's phone number, home phone number, which they wouldn't give that out at the front desk these days. I mean, so we just wound up we got to be phone friends and then friends. And when I moved to Austin, but anyway, I booked all these bands, and Dino Lee and the Wild Seeds and True Believers, and it was great. And so then I wound up working and meeting Ronnie Lane, and then we moved to Austin. And when I moved here, I had lived here in the very early 70s. I used to go to the Armadillo all the time. Mm-hmm. And when I moved back here in 86, I liked it back then, but I liked it even more so in the 80s. And I started working at Big Mamu, which is now C-Boys. So I did booking there, worked the door, and then did publicity. So, and then I wound up at I wound up getting an office. I had a choice of either officing over on, I think it was 29th Street, and it was an apartment complex, but South by Southwest was there, Easy Money, which was Lewis Meyer's booking company, in the Austin Chronicle. Or I could move over to where I think like where Diane from the Continental Club.
Diane Scott, yeah.
Yeah, there. Yeah, thank you. I know her so well. Like, what's it? And then there was over on Academy. There was like, I think Willie Nelson had a place over there, like offices. And I just decided I wanted to be over where South by Southwest and the Chronicle. And so I rented my office for only like $100 a month, and it was just amazing. And I wound up getting my first national media list from Bill Bentley. And Bill's worked with everybody. It was like, I may get this VP of Warner Brothers. I think he was Neil Young's publicist. He used to live in Austin. And then when I worked at Fitzgerald's in Houston, he was working for Slash Records. And he was working with like Los Lobos, and we became like really good phone friends. We were on the phone a lot. And then anyway, when I moved to Austin, he wound up sending me his 300-person national media list.
Wow.
Well, so there's a good investment there.
Yeah.
That's how I got my media list. And it was funny because, I mean, there were computers then, but I wasn't like on one. I had my Selectric typewriter still. But I mean, he mailed that to me. He didn't send me a download. You know what I mean? It's like I had my phone, my filing cabinet, and my typewriter, and cut and paste was like scissors. And
Yeah.
but I liked it. You didn't think you were lacking, you know, like you weren't thinking like, God, I wish I had that. And it was just the way it was. So
Yeah.
anyway, then I worked there for 10 years and did their all of South by Southwest. Started as a local publicist and then moved up to the director when Mark Pucci left. He was a publicist. And
So how did you, so with South by Southwest, because you were over there, right? You just kind of were hanging out with everybody. How did you end up being like working with
it
them?
was like, that's back when it's like, okay, I want to do this. I was gonna actually, I wanted to move to California. That was my big goal. But then I wound up staying in Austin, and I'm glad I did. But I wound up, well, you know, having the office over there, and I already had friends. I mean, it's also because of my friends there, but it was because of those three, the Chronicle, South by Southwest, and Easy Money. You know, just became friends, and it was a goal to work at South by Southwest. And then I had, I guess I had talked to Brenda Hutchison because she was working there. I think she was there at the time. I said it to her, or said it to Roland, something. And anyway, he wound up saying, I thought you were going to send me some info about working here. Anyway, I did. And then I got the job. And then that's kind of that. But yeah, it was just kind of knowing people and, you know, not having a plan, kind of a loose plan, but not, you know, I must achieve this by, you know, February 5th.
Well, it's also that kind of fun, heady time, you know,
It
having worked in a really cool startup in Berkeley across from Fantasy Records, it was great because it was loose and you kind of made it up as you went, right? It was that
yeah, it was amazing. It was easy. And you know, and working at South by Southwest too, when they moved to the offices over on 41st, that was fun. I mean, it was just a very different kind of office situation setting.
Can you paint a scene for us, like just like a typical day, like something that sticks out in your mind? That's
Well, I do remember because you know, Ed Ward, he would wear that uniform in the office. I remember that occasionally. So we'd all like, oh, there's Ed with his yearly. That was what he did, I guess, during the South by Southwest, during the actual event. But he'd wear it, and I remember seeing him in the office. And just, you know, the thing is it was just loose, but you knew what you had to get done, you know, and it wasn't, you had to kind of create some of that. Because when I first started there, the very first week, I was going to write Hugh wanted me to write a press release, but I was looking for like information, like, because, you know, researching like what I could draw from, but there wasn't anything. And I was just like, how am I supposed to write this? And then I just said to Hugh, it's like, okay, is it this way or this way? I just need to know which way it is, and then I'll be able to move forward. And they said, it's that way. You know, you just got to sort of figure it out. I mean, it wasn't like there weren't any reasons. This is in the beginning too, you know. So, I mean, it's not like everybody knew what they had to do, but I was new, you know. And actually, what Roland did, what he wanted to see was what my computer skills were, because I had never been on a computer at all. This is like 87.
Yeah.
And
I remember the first time I had to use a computer.
he made me.
Oh my God.
I know. He made me play, he didn't make me, but he had me play a game, and then he left the room. And I'm like, anyway, I passed that audition, but I still don't think I did what he wanted me to do on the game. But anyway, so.
That's such a guy thing to do. Here's a video game. Let's see how you do.
And they let me bring, just, you know, there were so many good moments because that was like family, and I still have a very good relationship with them. And, but when I had Zed, my son, they let me bring him to the office after when he was 3 months old.
Yeah.
Off for 3 months. And I mean, our offices in that second place, it was a house, and it was in our office, it was Rachel and myself, registration and publicity. And then in the other office, it was film. It was Hugh and Nancy Schaefer. And then I moved in that office. So, and then at the back, Roland's office was panels, and Music Fest was like this one long room until they built a little house in the back. But it was all in this little house, you
That's
know.
so cool. Yeah.
But said, yeah, we had a baby stuff in the room, and you know, like a
Awesome.
thing, and yeah, it was fun. There were a lot of good memories.
It sounds like a lot of things I had experienced in San Francisco in the early days. It was a lot looser and more ad hoc in the way you did things, and a lot of people just, hanging out, exchanging tips, and working together. And it's
was.
changed a lot since then. It's much more formal. You have to dress a certain way and talk a certain way and know the right people. Never was that way in your 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it was different. And I think I did since when I started writing, I had been a secretary prior to that, and I was a very frustrated secretary. But when I moved into this other world, that's been my world. I can't imagine like working in an office at this point, because I work at home, no, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that looser way of doing things is more my deal.
More productive.
Yeah, it is. And even now, I have several good friends that work for South by Southwest, and apparently, even I think they're doing mostly virtual now at home still. I'm not 100%. She definitely is. But there's still that they've still retained that basic spirit. I believe. I think it's still, they get the job done. Of course, it's changed. But I remember. Do you remember when David Bowie died? And their old offices were over by Whole Foods on Bowie Street. And I remember that was just so sad. And it may have been 1 a.m. I don't remember where it popped up. It might have been on Roland's timeline.
Yeah, I think it was.
And they changed the name of the street to David Bowie Street. And that went everywhere. And I don't think Roland totally took responsibility, but I think he had a huge part in that, which I just loved. So that's what I mean about that spirit. It's there, So.
What year did you? What year did you do the? You've done so many of these press conferences, right? But what year did you do the Johnny Cash one, and what was that like? What was he like?
I think that was 94. Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, that's a story. Yeah, he was my favorite. And so I worked on with his person that worked with him, Hugh Waddell. And there were just certain things he wanted. He wanted a limo with air conditioning and ice and Coca-Cola. And that was it. And so I also arranged, there's this cool limo company, and there's this young guy, I don't remember how I knew him, but they were around the corner from our offices, and he was a huge Johnny Cash fan and a musician. And he wanted Johnny Cash to sign his guitar. So I arranged all that. And then I meet Hugh at the airport, and then we're waiting for Johnny Cash, having a drink in the bar, and then it's time to go meet him. And that's when you could go. There were no restrictions,
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. Tons of people.
Yeah.
Tons of people. And it was just like so packed, and things were going so fast, and we were moving through the crowd. And then there was this man, and he was older, and he had a sign. It was kind of crudely written, but it said Johnny Cash on it. Is that how it was? Yeah. So when Johnny Cash got off the plane, we went with that guy. So to his limo. And I remember it was a black limo, a white limo. And I was just thinking, Johnny Cash, that kid wouldn't have ordered a white limo, for Johnny Cash. And
that's
so
funny.
so we're in the limo. It is so hot in that limo, and Johnny Cash has on his full, thick, huge, that suit that he always wore. And
his hat.
And he didn't have a hat on this time, but he's turned looking out, and this is at the old airport. So it was an old airport. It just seemed like it took forever to get to the Four Seasons. And so he's sweating, no ice, no nothing, no air conditioning. And I'm just like, oh, this is the longest, most miserable ride of my life. And we get there, and then that driver gives Hugh his card so he could give him a ride when Johnny Cash departs on Sunday. And I'm just like, in that moment, and I'm just like, okay, I want to get out of here, but I need to tell Hugh not to hire this guy because that's not the guy. And then Johnny Cash said, do you want to come up to the room?
I was just about to ask you about why it's been so long that we haven't heard anything about the Me Too movement in music. It really hit the Hollywood set really hard, but I haven't heard a whole lot about the music scene, and I know it happens.
Right. Yeah.
Is it just being kept super quiet? I mean, why hasn't it been, in your opinion? And if you don't know, you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I'm just wondering if you know why it hasn't become more forefront material.
And when I said he invited me to his room, I didn't mean it in that way.
Okay.
No, that's okay. That makes sense.
Awesome.
Did you think the same thing, Maggie? Were you with me?
I was like, wait a minute.
You've heard the story before. No, I'm getting like, wait a minute, from that to Me Too. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because he asked you, I was like, wait, what? Johnny? Wasn't he dedicated to Roseanne? This is weird.
No, he asked me with Hugh, his person, hey, you want to come up to the room? That's the last thing in a million years I thought he would say to me. And I'm like, oh my God, he doesn't hate my guts. So we went up there, and it was an amazing room. I mean, it was like the most gigantic room ever. And anyway, I was just being myself. And then we're in there, and I look out the window, and I just went, man, this room is so big, I could put my whole apartment in here. I said that to him, and he went, well, do you want to stay the night? You can stay in the room next door. June won't be here till tomorrow night. So he was not hitting on me at all, because if he would have been, I would have been sick. I would, it would have really devastated me.
That's the good old country boy approach.
Sounds a little.
No evil intent.
No, and he was just, and I said, no, Roland wants us all to stay in the Hyatt because he wants to be able to make sure that we're all up and at him in the morning. And so that was just so lovely. And then I left. And then when he went to play his set at, he did the keynote, and that was wonderful. So I set that press conference up and invited, like, back then I had on a little slip of paper I'd pass to the press person that was coming towards me when they registered. I'd give them the little note that said that they could attend the press conference. So that was in one of the back rooms, and yeah, it was just fun. And then after it was over, we went out the back way, and my friend Martha Grennan took the most amazing photo of him and I. I should have sent that to you, Maggie. It's really like we're hugging, and it's just, and then down below us, there's these two super cool Black guys in these great suits and hats. It just was such a great photo.
Yeah.
And moment. And anyway, then after that, he played it, and the keynote was wonderful. He sang some songs, and he was just great. And then he played Emos, and Beck opened. I think Johnny Cash went on first, and then Beck. I could be wrong.
Was that the old emos or the? Yeah, it was the old.
Yeah, right. The old real emos, and Beck was only 19 at that time, and yeah, that was a great show. But we got to ride, and we did get to ride in the limo with him my sister and I, because she was photographing the show, and that was really fun. You know, it was like one of those kind of giddy moments. But when we drove down the street, he asked the driver to, and he asked us if we minded. He wanted to drive down the road because, oh God, what's his name? His ex-son-in-law, Rodney Crowell, was playing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he said, and it just was quiet in the car, and it's just the way he looked. And he said, that's my son-in-law. And that's when they were getting a divorce, I believe,
Okay.
Bash. But it's just like being in this moment, you know, it felt so personal. It was. So,
Was he I'm always curious, like when you meet somebody famous, was he a sort of average height guy or a tall guy or a shorter?
Taller than me, and I'm 5'8". I remember him being 6 feet. I could be wrong, but I think so. He was not short. Just he was Johnny Cash. It was like Johnny Cash.
It doesn't matter how big he is. He's Johnny. He's gonna be big. He's just.
And then, you know, years later in 2008, my dad passed, and he lived in Henderson. Well, they lived in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and actually Johnny Cash lived a mile down from my dad's house, so I would always go by there, you know, when we'd visit. But anyway, we received these flowers from someone, couldn't figure out who they were from, and it turns out they were from Hugh Waddell, Johnny Cash's assistant at the time. You know, and that was like from 1994 to, you know, 2008. I hadn't had any contact with him. So that was real meaningful. But anyway, yeah, it was great. He was amazing.
Well, and you know, like it's going to take several episodes to cover your relationship with Ronnie and Mac.
Oh, right.
But let's start like more recent. Tell us what it was like going with Mac to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame award ceremony for the Small Faces and Faces while I let my cat out the door.
Yeah, that was just really fun. And yeah, that's all. It was fun. Working fun. He was so wonderful. He loved my son, Zed. And I think it's Zed's 17th birthday. He provided a ticket for Zed to go, and I'm pretty sure for my brother-in-law too. So they got to hang, and then, you know, then I did what I needed to do with Mac. But it was a great experience. I remember that when we were at the tape, Mac had migraines, which is known, and we were going to have dinner, but we wound up having it in our rooms because of he had a headache right before we were supposed to go to the awards. And then when we were inside at the table, I was just hoping that, you know, he would make it through the whole event. And then that the guy, I think it was Green Day. It was Green Day. I knew it's a whole band. Oh my God, they were so, I love loud music. I mean, I love the True Believers, and they were louder than anybody. But I think Green Day was above them. They were so loud. I was terrified that Mac was just gonna go. You know how he talked, fuck this, I'm leaving. He didn't. I was so proud of him.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, so that we got through that, but that was really nice. Yeah.
Didn't he say something about them?
Yes. One night I was working really late, and one of those Google alerts come through, and it says in the Glagon, says, I have it somewhere, but I'm not going to quote it properly. Probably, if I had a gun, I think he said I'd shoot him. I tell him, Art, and I'm like thinking in old school publicist ways, because at that time I did publicity on the album. It was released on Never Say Never. Was released on several different labels over a period of time, 6 years. And I worked publicity on it, but also Surefire Publicity was working on it, and we were kind of working on it together. So when I saw that, I emailed his manager and went, can Surefire do something about this? But of course not, because it went viral. No, of course they can't stop it.
Yeah.
In the interview, it was with Rolling Stone, and it's like this great opportunity to talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame experience. And he said he was just talking about how loud it was with them and Green Day, and then he said that. And I'm like, you can't say that, and you cannot say that now, especially now during these times. But he did.
Yeah.
And anyway, I mean, I was just so nervous about what could have happened. Then I looked on Twitter, and there were musicians. It wasn't Ryan Adams, it was somebody. They were all like, some of them were congratulating him because I guess they didn't like Green Day. But I felt bad because I just felt kind of bad for Green Day if they saw that, and what if they were huge fans. And Mac was just like that. He was going to say everything that he felt.
No filter, right? But yeah, that circles back to part of the job as a publicist, that you always have to,
Well, but see, then I was saying to his manager, I can't Surefire get on top of this, tamp it down. Well, maybe in the 60s. No, I mean, there's no way. So, and I wanted to do something, but it was out there, so you just have to kind of let it die, I guess, and then laugh about it later.
Once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't get it back in these days.
Yeah, I mean, but like when we were going to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Austin, you'd have to just like keep him moving and let him talk for a little bit with people, fans, and then just that sort of thing. It's kind of fun. Just
well, he really liked
Bay. I had to do that with Ronnie Lane a lot, because Ronnie would always, there'd be so many people that would really try to use him. Like it was like carnival sometimes. It was just weird.
Yeah, encountering fans is always interesting. I've been through a few of those nightmares. Do you have any particular memories of really strange fan encounters for you and your clients?
That's an interesting question.
Some of them can be really strange.
I have one from Houston when I was working with Ronnie, and I'll condense it. It was just this woman, because that's a whole other story. But this one guy, him and his wife, she was British, befriended Ronnie, and she worked with the person who was going to become his attorney. So Elizabeth, I think was her name, but her husband would take Ronnie swimming every day. They'd get high, but he started. Bottom line, this guy wanted to start some kind of a satellite television show with Ronnie being the host, and he was trying to get Ronnie to rewrite write songs, and it was just, I watched him do this, and Ronnie try to write this stuff, and it was just, I read it and it was just terrible. And I said, your songs are so deep and spiritual and beautiful. Like, what is, he thought Ronnie had money, that's my assumption. So it's like trying to keep those people away, and they're out there. Ronnie got a lot of that, more than Mac, and Ronnie was probably more vulnerable too, just because of MS and people thinking he was, an easy hit.
Yeah.
Ronnie was savvy too, but a little harder to deal with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of vampires out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good name for them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Did you tell because again, like, I want to have you on another show where we, focus more like on Ronnie, England, stuff like that. But you said you met Ronnie in Houston. Tell us how you met him. Was it at Fitzgerald's or?
No, I was working at I met him at Fitzgerald's actually, originally, because we did a big benefit for him there at the club, and I organized it. That was kind of cool.
Was this related to ARMS, or was this pre-ARMS?
Yeah, he moved to Austin, and it was the ARMS. He just moved here. It was a Welcome to Houston, Ronnie Lane kind of benefit for his organization. And then I wound up in.
What year was it?
1980. let's just say 84. I'd have to go check the date.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit before then. But yeah, I interviewed him and we hit it off as friends. And after that, he gave me his phone number and all, but I just thought, I don't want to, there's probably a lot of people bugging him right now. And then as time went on, I started getting calls from, I did some benefits for other friends and the music world that had MS and did publicity and organize them. And so this one guy called me and they were trying to get this book to me that this Dr. Soul had written about MS. And they tried to call Ronnie in and arrange a meeting and all, and they could never get through to the arms office. The phone would just ring and ring, and they tried a lot. So they thought maybe I could, since they read that interview in the Fitzgerald. And so that's when I called Ronnie again. And then we just started hanging out, and that whole organization was creepy. And I mean, it was all a front for May Nicole. And because when they moved to Austin, Houston, his friends, like, Eric Clapton and those guys that did the arms concerts to raise money in England, they did those shows here. They did 9 across the country, I believe. And so they didn't want the money to particularly go back to England. So they thought, we'll set up an organization here. Ronnie will move here. And they thought setting it up with May Nicole, who had MS, would be perfect. And she was an attorney. But I think an attorney over there, what are they called? Solicitors. And I think they're a gentler, kinder kind of thing than the stereotype of what they are here. And she just ran her offices out of the arms office, and Ronnie had no power. So that's how we met. That's a big story.
Yeah. And I really want to, we should do a whole episode on that, because what would be great too is to show some pictures, from that experience, especially because I do want to circle back to the Wembley show. What was that?
That was 86.
86. And we'll cover it more, but I mean, you got to hold his arm and help him on stage at Wembley Arena. What?
It was actually at the stadium.
Wow.
And there's video of it. It ran on, at the time, MTV and VH1 a lot. And then it would even a few years ago, if they were showing something about Rod Stewart, it would. But yeah, that was an amazing trip.
I bet. But remind the kids out there where this happened before they were even born. Like, who was playing that benefit show?
God, let's see. The Faces, and then it was the Faces reunion. And I think the next time I'll be able to tell you who was on it. I know that Queen, I can't remember if Queen wasn't on that show. No, that was separate. But we did go to Queen's show. Ronnie was invited to that show at the stadium. And then we went to 2 of their concerts. And I always liked them, but I wasn't like a super fan. But when I saw them in action and Freddie Mercury, I just fell in love.
Wow.
We got to go to 2 of their parties. They have parties like nobody else.
Oh, God.
I bet.
There was this one, and it was in London on top of this hotel roof, and they had just like rows and rows of like food. And then when I walked into the bathroom, this guy was in there. He had like an oil down body and a little black thong thing on, and he took when I left the stall, he walked me over to the sink and washed my hands. It was just so it was just like really very heady
times.
Yeah, and then I went to another party, and that was outside, and it was like it was set up like a carnival. There were women walking around with trays of drinks with no tops on, and then there'd be two women or whoever mud wrestling in like this mud. It was just crazy, you know. In a Ferris wheel, and yeah, it was. But then it was very normal too. I mean, you know, that was the first 2 weeks was like that, you know, filled with lots of fun stuff. But just being over there and living there for that amount of time was really nice.
Yeah, and how long were y'all over there again?
4 months, and we were going to stay. Like when we went over initially, I had never been overseas, and Ronnie wanted to stay, and I'm like, well, 2 weeks would be great. And then when we get over there, I want to stay, and he wants to come back. But we were looking to live there in Camden Town, but decided to come back, which was fine.
Oh, we're glad you did. We didn't want to lose you.
I'm happy too. I wouldn't know y'all, and I wouldn't have my son either.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, one of the things, because we are going to wind up in a couple of minutes here, I can't believe the time is already over, but that's why we have to come back. There's so many more stories.
Thank you.
I just wanted, you got to stay at Eric Clapton's estate, right?
We visited. I spent my birthday. I mean, I turned whatever age it was at midnight, and they sang "Happy Birthday" when we were leaving. That was fun. It was a normal.
Yeah, it's just like you're hanging out. You know, yeah.
It was. So it's just. I went. Patty Clapton and I went and got Indian food. Came back. We ate in their little kitchen. I mean, they had a mansion, but I didn't take any photos at all. I took photos outside. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not the one that's going to go, can I take pictures of, you know, so that was cool. And on the wall in the living room, they had the original artwork of the Layla album cover.
Oh, wow. How big is it approximately?
I don't like an album, I
These
guess.
album size. Yeah, because sometimes they're like bigger or whatever, you know, so.
And I liked it like in the bathroom and some of the other, like in their little tiny bathroom downstairs. It was just a toilet, but they have all these little 3x5 photos stuck all over in there. I just love that. It was just fun.
Wow.
Well, JoRae, when you come back for another visit with us, I want to make sure you bring along some photos, because I'm sure you could put together a nice little slideshow. We can show those on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I'm sure yours are a lot better than any of ours.
I'll see. I do have some photos from over there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even over there, just, you know,
Yeah, the
stuff
Johnny
that you
Cash.
really have that are cool photos from all the stuff you've done.
Yeah.
Where I have some of your stuff archived for you, because
Yeah.
I did JoRae's website, and so if you want to check out her work and hire her as a publicist, her web address is hardpressedpublicity.com.
Thank you. It's a beautiful website too. Maggie did a phenomenal job. Finally, she got it all out of me after 100 years. But it happened.
Well,
It's a great
I
site.
think we've run out of time.
Yeah, and now is when I show my little thing here.
Thank you,
so
Maggie.
much. Thank you all so much.
Thank
JoRae.
y'all.
Susie.
Thank you guys.
Lucy, thank you.
We should close out with the faces. Ooh la la.
Ooh la la.
Definitely.
All right, so we're gonna stop our stream, and we'll talk to you next week. And JoRae, we'll see you soon.
And the replay will be on YouTube tomorrow.
Right on.